Touting a booming economy, secure borders, and falling crime rates, President Donald Trump presented his case to the nation last night that under his leadership, the country is on the right track. Democrats, however, seem to disagree with that assessment. Joining me now with her analysis is Rachel Del Guidice. She is congressional reporter for the Daily Signal. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's start off with your thoughts of the president's speech last night. What did you think?
I think it was a uniquely patriotic moment. Every State of the Union is special. The guests that are invited, talking about the accomplishments, but looking how President Trump really highlighted the stories of everyday Americans, from the Tuskegee Airman, who was a veteran of 3 wars, to the family that was reunited. So that was really beautiful to see, but also looking at how the American people have benefited a lot in the past 3 years under President Trump. I mean, looking at just unemployment numbers, it's a 50-year unemployment low, which is really cool to see. Lowest it's been for African Americans. They have the lowest unemployment rates ever. And something for me that was interesting to see when I write about these issues, I covered tax reform when it was passed in 2017. And these are not just people that they brought in, like these are uniquely American stories. There was a man I covered in Florida. He had a cookie baking business, diabetic-free, sugar-free cookies, and he had an employee there. He gave him a raise, and this employee was able to buy his wife a new car because she had 2 small girls. And so just looking at those stories, I was able to hear the story from Mike himself, and watching last night and covering the speech, I was like, these are not just people that they've chosen. While it's wonderful, these are the stories of Americans across this country.
Yeah, Rachel, the president talked about his achievements, and he really didn't focus at all on the impeachment. Do you think that was an effective strategy?
I think it was effective. I think whenever you look at the American people and tell their stories, I think that is what is most effective, because that's what we identify with. And then when you look at the response of the left, with Nancy Pelosi ripping up the speech as soon as it's finished, I was sitting there watching, I'm like, that was a speech that told these beautiful American stories of that Tuskegee Airman, of the family that was reunited, the girl who received a scholarship for her school, so many other beautiful stories. And when the left claims to be the party, of acceptance, of tolerance, of, we want to work together, but then an incident like that happens, I think it shows the exact opposite. And it shows that, middle Americans, middle America, this is, they're the one that are experiencing the benefits of this, and not what the left tries to do when they try to be divisive instead of working to unite. And I think this speech, Lindsey Graham put it the best. He's like, you can tear up the speech, but you can't tear up the accomplishments. And you couldn't have put it better.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that, about the tension between the two. We saw that even President Trump, when Speaker Pelosi went to shake his hand, he kind of pulled away, and then obviously her ripping up the scripts. It's really, that tension's obvious to a lot of folks.
It is obvious to a lot of folks, and there was banter on Twitter, as it always is, like, oh, did he see her hand? Did he not see her hand? Who knows? I mean, we won't know, but I think it's interesting. There was another clip on Twitter where it looked like, before this came out a couple hours ago, of her like testing to rip the speech, and then at the very end, she obviously ripped it both in two. And I think when you highlight divisiveness like that, that's not what Americans want to see. They're wanting to see all of these accomplishments, and they're living those accomplishments. And so I think that down the road, as we go into election, Americans will decide ultimately where they want to go. But I think the State of the Union and the great successes that people owned being there are story enough for that.
Yeah, and quickly, we're almost out of time, but some analysts are saying, in essence, this was a re-election pitch, the speech was, for the president. What do you think of that, and do you think that it's playing to his voters?
It very well could be, but I think when you look at what has happened, how he has secured the border, how the economy is booming, I think it's interesting. Just today, a Gallup poll came out that I think it was 59% of Americans are excited about their economic future. And so these are real wins, and I think it's because of policy he's worked to implement since day one that we're reaping now. So I think it goes back to that. We'll see where it goes, but by telling those stories, I think he wasn't just saying, oh, this is my vision for the future. While he did say that, he was like, this is real life for Americans now, with these hugely amazing unemployment numbers, African-American unemployment at an all-time high, unemployment for women at an all-time high, for other minorities. So he was just telling those true stories, and that is an effective strategy.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis, Rachel. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Rachel Del Guidice, the congressional reporter for the Daily Signal. Thanks again, Rachel.
Thank you.